Welcome to Forum 360, your global outlook with a local view. I am your host, Brian Murphy. To be a dancer takes dedication and hard work. No matter what level you're at, your heart and soul is challenged. Today we're going to talk to you about what it takes to be a dancer. What are some of the obstacles and rewards? Can you have kids and dance? And does the mantra, "you can't dance forever," really mean? Do dancers really retire at 30 years old? Being a dancer myself, dancing is my life. Everything I've done is related to my dancing. I realize not everyone gets these opportunities, and I feel it's important to talk about what life is beyond dance. Is it administrative? Are you a director? Are you choreographing? Are you a studio owner? Etc. And lastly, what does it really mean to be a professional dancer? Does it mean you get a couple gigs here and there? Or is it beyond that? To answer these questions and more, I have this professional dancer here, Regina Pietraroia. Hi.
Hi, Brian.
How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm so glad you were able to join us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking me.
So I wanted to, for maybe the first question I want to ask you, and then we'll go into your history, is what is it like to be a professional dancer?
What is it like to be a professional dancer? Well, I think on one hand, it might be a little bit less glamorous than maybe some people think that it is. It takes, as you said in your introduction, it takes a ton of hard work, and it's really constant hard work. However, it's hard work, it's something that you love, so in some ways it takes away a little bit of those feelings of, oh, I have to keep doing this, I have to keep doing this, because you do love it. It's always I think that being a professional dancer, one of the biggest things about it is flexibility, and I don't mean being able to do a split.
Yes, right. You're right. You
That's certainly an important aspect of it. You need your muscles to be flexible, but really, it's about being flexible with what your abilities are, with what your outlook on life is, with what you're willing to look at as far as what a day's work entails. And so to me, one of the biggest aspects of being a professional is maintaining that flexibility. And I mean that both, physically, literally, and also mostly figuratively. And, jobs change, choreography changes, the art form changes, and through all of that, you find yourself as a constant and your abilities as a constant through that.
There's a lot there, and everything you've said is very true. So let's dive into a couple of things you said. You use the word flexibility. Can you go into more in depth what it means by flexibility? I agree, when a choreographer comes in, you have to be able to do what they say, correct?
Right.
So maybe the better question is, how do you get to that place to be flexible?
I think that with getting to a professional level in dance, your training is so structured, and so that structure provides a framework from which you can then find flexibility outside of that. So I'm not sure if that really makes sense, so I'll try to dive into it a little bit more.
But it's good.
So if a choreographer is coming in, or a director, if someone is, you may suddenly be asked to do something that feels very foreign to you, or to play a character that feels foreign to you, or to dance a role that maybe you don't feel is a great role for you, but the director or the choreographer has seen something in you and chosen you for that role. And those moments can be confusing, and they can be challenging mentally and physically. And so having the structure of the training to go back to, I think is a key to being able to survive those challenges.
Wow. And that, it seems like a lot. But if we were to simplify, if you put it in maybe 2 or 3 words, how would you, if somebody was right here and they said, I want to be a professional dancer, flexibility, but, you know, what is another word that you can think of that would better describe, in order to become a professional dancer, to succeed?
Well, I think the word perseverance is the first word that comes to mind. And I think that that goes for professional dancing, but obviously that would go for any high level that anyone wanted to achieve in any field. So it would be the same with a visual artist or a musician or an actor. You can gain a high level of ability and you can be born with a lot of talent, but if you're not willing to keep pushing through trials and to keep going even if you hear no a million times, it's really about that perseverance. Or, you know, if you have an injury, that's another thing that can make it really easy to fall back or to fall out of it. And, you know, some dancers do struggle with injuries that do end their careers. But, you know, to try to persevere beyond whatever challenges you may be facing, I think is really a key.
So getting to the injury, now let's talk about you and your dancing career. You've been injured before. Do you want to talk about that injury and talk about the perseverance to get beyond that injury?
Sure. Well, I will share probably one of my more intense injuries happened during the pas de deux of the ballet Cinderella when I was dancing the role of Cinderella. And I was in one of the very last lifts with my partner, and I knew that something was wrong. We both knew that something was wrong, and I had dislocated my rib, which means, in case, you know, people out there haven't dislocated their rib before, it means that you can't breathe. And it's a very foreign feeling, especially for a dancer who's on stage managing these difficult things. So I finished the performance out even with the situation that I was in. So even though dancers don't talk on stage, we have other ways that we communicate with the others on stage, in the wings, or the partner that we may be dancing with. And so we were able to talk through, without speaking, what we were going to do to get through the rest of the performance. And
let me just put some light on this, though. Here you have these people watching you. I didn't even interrupt you. You have these people watching. There was a situation where you've been injured. The lights are on, the music's going. By and large, you have no choice but to keep going. You really have no choice. You can't just stop the music and get off stage.
Right.
That in itself is an important component of what it takes to be a professional dancer. But go ahead, continue.
Right, the show must go on.
right?
Yes.
So here you are, and then the communication between you two.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other component that we could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But let's continue on with what happened in this scenario.
So, you know, I was in my, well, this just happened a little over a year ago, and it definitely was something where I thought, you know, nothing like that had ever happened to me before, and I didn't know what it was going to do to my back. And I am past the age of 30, which you referenced in your intro as the possible retirement age. And so I had some thoughts about, you know, what is this going to mean? What am I going to have to do to bring this back? And I am fortunate to know some great physical therapists who are familiar with dance. And I had the support that I needed to be able to get some rest. And fortunately, that was the final performance for that run.
Okay.
If it hadn't been, I'm not sure what would have happened. But it was the final performance, so I was able to rest. And I do still feel it, even though it was about a year and a half ago. I do still feel it sometimes. And you know, but it's one of those things that you persevere past, and that's a choice, I guess, that I've personally made to make sure that something like that didn't slow me down or stop me from what I wanted to do.
So, you know, it takes a lot to get beyond an injury. A lot of times dancers stop if it gets overwhelming, especially after a year, you know. So When did you know, let's just move along here. When did you know that you want to be a professional dancer? Was there a certain time? Was it like kind of hit you, or was it just?
Well, I grew up in a family where there were dancers in earlier generations. So my great aunt and great uncle, Eleanor Capco and John Capco, they were both professional ballet dancers in Cleveland in the 1940s and 50s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they, and so I never really saw them dance, but this was something that I grew up with the idea that that was something real that you could really do, that it wasn't just something that you would see on TV or in a movie, that real people actually can become professional dancers. And my mother had taken some dance lessons, but somewhere around the age of 3 or 4, someone bought me a tutu. And, you know, it was like a play tutu, but
it meant a lot to you.
It meant a lot to me. And at that time, in the 80s, there was dance on TV, and there was this beautiful Nutcracker that featured Baryshnikov and Gelsey Kirkland. And we had a VHS of it, and I would watch that just every day.
I love it.
Every day.
So I want to say this is a 360 Forum. My name is Brian Murphy. I'm the host. This is Regina Pietraroia, and we're having a discussion really about what it's like to be a dancer. And we've kind of delved into some of the injuries. She's about to tell us a really great story about why she's become a dancer herself.
Yeah, so I had on my play tutu, and I, am watching this Nutcracker from 1978, I think is what it was taped, over and over again. And my parents put me in classes at the Y, just to see if I liked it. Oh. And lo and behold, big surprise, I loved it. And from then on, it was really about me taking as many classes as they would drive me to. And I grew up on a vineyard, so we had 30 acres of land, and we were really far from any kind of training. So we drove about 45 minutes each way a couple times a week to dance class, after school, of course, and my love for it just built from there. And I think that even as a teenager, I still didn't really see the path to making it happen. And I think it was really with getting to know other professional dancers who were older than me, and seeing and watching the way that they got into professional work, that encouraged me and provided me like the route that I needed to take and find in order to be able to do that myself.
There's a lot there, and that's the word I was writing down, dedication. I think when you start to get yourself, I want to go take class, I want to, and you stayed focused. And this is why you're still to this day dancing, because you really created a nice foundation for yourself. When your background did, your teachers, to create a foundation for yourself. So I want to talk more about what you're doing now. But I wanted to ask you a question. What is the hardest thing about dancing?
The hardest thing about dancing. I could answer that question in a couple of ways. One thing that I have sort of already touched on would be that sometimes it can be hard to keep going when something gets difficult. And that's in every, that would go for anyone. I also enjoy writing, and that's something that, I don't want to give up on either, and that, maybe I'll get into more later in my life. But to not give up on dancing can be hard when you've faced a lot of, I don't want to say negativity, but if you faced a lot of challenges and a lot of obstacles, those things can get overwhelming and frustrating over time. The other thing is sometimes to be able to re-inspire myself with an art form that I've been practicing for over 30 years,
Yes.
And to be able to find new ways to look at it. And for that, living in the 21st century is really amazing, because we can get online and we can visit classes all around the world just by going on a quick YouTube search and seeing other dancers. It can be really inspiring. And then I also am fortunate to have such a great group of dancers, in Northeast Ohio, and I feel like we all sort of inspire each other.
We do, and it's being in the area as long as we've been in the area as long as we have. It's amazing, actually. There's a lot of professional dancers around, and we all work together on creating this nice group. And we all teach and do dance, but we are inspired by each other. It's a great thing. So, what is, I don't want to say easiest thing, but I mean, I think you've talked about it already, about what inspires you. Talk about the performing component of it.
I think performance is one of the big reasons why a lot of people stick with dance, because the feeling of performing is this feeling of such ultimate presentness that when you've truly experienced it, it's hard to find that in any other aspect of your life. To be able to be on stage with other dancers that you're creating something with, to music, and if you want to add the component of live music, that makes it even one more level up, because you have the energy of the musicians, and then also the energy of the audience. And the audience could be anything from a community setting at a school or in a nursing home, all the way through downtown Cleveland at Playhouse Square. And when you're feeling that energy from the audience and they are engaged in the same moment that you're engaged in creating, it's an incredibly powerful feeling.
I agree. So there's a point where all of us have to get to, the point of not doing it. Some of us have an unfortunate experience with injury and are kind of forced out of it. Some of us have the great fortune and be able to dance a long, long time. How do you really know?
That might be one of the hardest questions for any dancer to answer, because I think that as you grow older as a dancer, it's something that you worry about. Am I still doing this to the level that I feel is fair to the art form? And I think that with ballet specifically, ballet technique gives you the answer to some degree. So, for example, to go on point, your ankle needs a certain level of flexibility. So your ankle has to be able to move
go
to
up.
this position
Yes.
where it's completely flat. So if your ankle loses flexibility and you're only part of the way there, then really it becomes a safety issue that you really can't be dancing on point anymore. And with the other movements in ballet, as far as jumping and extensions with the legs, everyone develops standards sort of for themselves. And I think that there probably is a point where you can't meet your own standards within the structure of ballet, which might be a signal that it might be time to move on.
It's not all depressing when you stop, because there are other ways to dance.
Sure.
I mean, you can get into other, maybe community dancing. You just have to come to a place where an acceptance of knowing. But that's a good point about the ballet. Like, you have a standard, and come to terms that your standard is not there anymore.
Yeah.
And you choose, do I force myself to get to that standard? Or do you have to make a decision and say, you know what, maybe this is where it is now?
Yeah. I'm not sure what that moment is
No.
like, but I
don't
hope
either. Well,
I hope that I will know when it happens.
Yes. Yes, and I think that sometimes we have loved ones that tell us, or we might have, I think circumstances tell us, but not always. I think dancers are older now and dancing as they're older. So that mantra I said earlier, 30, really it's the new 40.
Right.
Because we have so many ways to stay fit now.
Right.
A lot of different dance companies that are performing a lot. It might not be ballet, but you can do contemporary modern work.
Right.
Ballet is very taxing on your body, as we know. Modern and contemporary is not as taxing, so you're really able to perform almost in your 50s. And if you're true to your art form, people will follow you. So getting to you now, you haven't retired dancing, but talk about something outside of dancing you're doing? What have you been doing?
Well, in addition to my dancing, I'm no longer a full-time company member for any organization. So when I perform, it's on a freelance basis, which helps with scheduling and allows me to fit other things into my time. And one of the things that has come about for me in the last couple of years is owning my own training studio where I am able to take all of my knowledge and experience from dance and share it with a new generation of dancers.
How satisfying. Yes?
It's amazing, yeah.
Tell me what's amazing about it. What's satisfying about it?
Well, you have students who have all different backgrounds and interest, and really what you're doing with them when you're teaching them dance is you're giving them a language. You're giving them a language to express themselves. In school, they're learning how to express themselves through writing, but I think we all understand that that's only one really small way that you can express yourself. I mean, you can express yourself through so many different formats. And one way is through control of your body. And so to see a student begin to understand how he or she can control their body in order to say something or even just execute something that they themselves think is really cool, you know, that is a really powerful feeling.
It's like you're giving back.
Yeah. Well, and something that gave me so much joy, or gives me so much joy, because it still gives me joy, but to be able to create that experience for someone else. What else can you ask for, really?
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing experience. So I have we call a lightning round.
Okay.
And so I'll ask you a couple questions and just answer them how you want them to be answered. Okay? What is your favorite food?
My favorite food? Oh my gosh. Can I say bananas? I love bananas. That's such a dorky favorite food. It's so healthy, but I love bananas.
You can definitely say bananas.
I love bananas because I can bake them. I can put them in smoothies. They're healthy.
That is so true.
Yes. Okay,
you can
bananas.
put chocolate on them too. You can dip them with chocolate.
Peanut butter.
You can.
Everything. So good.
So maybe I should ask you, what did you have for dinner last night?
What did I have for dinner last night? I had macaroni and cheese.
Yum. That's very good. Do you have any pets?
I have one cat. Her name is Mixie, and she is a tuxedo cat.
A tuxedo cat?
Yeah, she's
what
black and white.
Oh, okay, black and white.
And she keeps her tux very clean.
I love that. And I'm going to get back to the dancing here. You have your kids now at your school.
Yeah.
What advice would you give one of your kids who maybe a junior in high school and they are aspiring to be a professional dancer? And what would you say to them?
To not give up and to be open, because your idea of what it is to be a professional dancer may be on one track, and if you're only looking at this track that's right in front of your eyes and you miss this turn off to the right, you could miss an opportunity. So to be open to experiences and open to looking at things in a different light, I think is really important.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit. We only have a little bit of time here left. Mm-hmm. What if you know that they're not going to be a professional dancer and you know they don't have the talent?
I think that if you persevere at something, for example, dance, maybe if they're not talented enough to get a job in the company, maybe they can get a job with something involved. Maybe they
For example,
with costuming. For example, with lighting. For example, I don't want to say with teaching, although that could be, it takes a special talent to teach, which is related to dancing, but it's also a separate thing unto itself. I just feel like with music, there's so many different things with administration, with helping companies find funding. There are so many aspects that go into creating a professional performance that if you want to continue to be involved in it, there's avenues that are open if you keep your eyes open for them.
Well said. Regina Pietraroia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brian.
Really gave a great insight about being a dancer. And as you can see, even though you may not dance professionally, there are many opportunities to be in the dancer field. As she was saying, you could be a choreographer, you could be a studio owner, you can teach, so many different things. So you don't have to walk away from it completely. Sometimes we think dancers don't have a family either. And one day we can have families also. You can do many things. I hope this interview has changed your mindset about what it's like to be a professional dancer. Thank you, Regina, for being our guest today on 360 Forum.
Forum 360 is brought to you by Electrical Impulse Communications, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, an anonymous donor, the Jewish Community Board of Akron, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Blue Green, and Forum 360 supporters.